An entire civilization once spoke without a single word. They built their world around a silent language of shadow and light, a society known as Lumina. This discovery forces us to rethink everything we know about human connection. By the end of this story, you will understand how a people could encode their entire history in something as fleeting as a sunbeam. We will uncover how they engineered their cities to broadcast complex messages and explore the chilling reason their voices were suddenly silenced. What does it mean for a society to build its identity on something you cannot touch? The polished obsidian disc felt cool and unnervingly smooth in Dr. Alastair Finch's hand. It was the summer of 1923, in a windswept valley that offered no clues to the people who had left it behind. His team had found no pottery shards, no tools, not even the faintest foundation of a wall, just this single, perfect circle of black glass, seemingly inert. For weeks, it sat in a catalog drawer, labeled as a ceremonial object, a curiosity. The breakthrough came by pure accident. A junior researcher, cataloging the find near a tent flap, happened to tilt the disc as the late afternoon sun streamed inside. In that instant, the obsidian came alive. An intricate lattice of lines and geometric shapes, impossibly fine, was projected onto the dusty ground. The etching was so subtle it was completely invisible to the naked eye, only revealing its secret when light passed through it at one exact angle. This was no mere piece of art. It was a locked message waiting for the key. The discovery of a second disc and then a third, each with a completely unique internal pattern, shattered the initial theory. A ceremonial object might be replicated, but these were individual. They were variations on a theme no one could yet read. Dr. Finch, a man known for his cautious approach, found himself proposing a radical idea. He stood before his skeptical colleagues and suggested these discs were not decorations. They were functional. He called them Lexicon stones, the foundational components of a larger, more complex system of communication. Imagine finding a single, beautifully crafted wooden block with a letter carved on it. Then you find another and another, each with a different letter. You would not assume they were mere paperweights. You would know you were looking at an alphabet. For Finch, these projections of light and shadow were not pictures. They were a silent, visual language. His proposal set the stage for a mystery that would baffle researchers for the next 100 years, a puzzle built from darkness and illumination. Finch and his team had uncovered an alphabet, but they had no idea how to read the sentences. The lexicon stones were individual words, but the civilization's true language was spoken in the spaces between them. We now call this system photonic syntax, and its principles reveal a communication method of breathtaking sophistication. It was far more complex than a simple binary code of on and off. The Luminarians used the very quality of light itself as a grammatical tool. The intensity of a beam, its color, even the precise angle at which it struck a surface, these were not mere aesthetic choices. They were the equivalent of vocal inflection, punctuation, and emotional tone all woven into one. Consider a single symbol, perhaps one representing a warning. Projected with the stark, unforgiving light of a midday sun, that symbol might carry the weight of a law, a command from a ruler that could not be disobeyed. But cast that exact same symbol using the gentle, rose-gold light of dawn, filtered through a sheet of crystalline calcite, and its meaning would transform entirely. It could become a heartfelt plea, a line from a love poem, or a word of gentle caution. The core message was the same, but its emotional and social context was completely altered by the quality of the light delivering it. This use of color temperature, achieved by placing different mineral filters over light sources, added a layer of nuance we can barely grasp. How do you translate the emotional warmth of a sunset into a written law? How does a society legislate with hues of amber and blue? This was a language where a message's legal weight and its poetic beauty were dictated by the same physical property. The angle of the light source introduced another dimension. A beam striking a surface directly from above might denote a public announcement, something for everyone. That same pattern arriving from a low, raking angle could signal a private communication, a secret meant only for a select few who knew where to stand. The architecture itself became a partner in this silent dialogue, with walls and plazas engineered as receiving canvases for these luminous declarations. We are only beginning to comprehend the linguistic depth of a civilization that could encode a royal decree and a whispered sonnet within the very same arrangement of shadow and light. This silent language demanded a stage, and the Luminarians built one of impossible scale. Their cities were not collections of buildings but singular, cohesive instruments engineered for communication. Every structure, from the tallest tower to the most humble plaza, was designed with one primary function: to cast, carry, and receive the language of light. They achieved this with a breathtaking fusion of art and physics, creating an urban landscape that was itself a living, speaking entity. At the heart of this network stood the spire scribes. These were not simple decorative obelisks but impossibly slender towers, needle-like in their precision, engineered to act as both transmitters and receivers. A message initiated at a central solar temple would be focused into a beam and aimed at the first spire. At its peak, a complex array of polished lenses and Lexicon stones would catch the incoming light, interpret its syntax, and then project a refined, amplified version of the message toward the next spire in the chain. In this way, information could leap across the entire city in moments, a silent conversation happening high above the heads of the people below. To capture these aerial messages, the Luminarians constructed vast, concave echo walls. These were not solid barriers but sweeping, curved surfaces of specially quarried stone, their faces ground to a perfect parabolic curve. They functioned like gigantic satellite dishes, but for light. An echo wall would collect the faint, wide-angle beams from the spire scribes and focus them down to a single, sharp point of illumination on a designated reading stone. This ensured that even a complex message weakened by distance would arrive with perfect clarity. The very stone of the city was part of the lexicon. Quarries were chosen not for their structural strength alone, but for their optical properties. A pale, highly reflective limestone might be used for a wall intended to bounce light deep into a shaded courtyard. A different district built from a dark, light-absorbing basalt would be designed for high contrast, making the projected symbols appear with stark, undeniable authority. Can you envision the daily rhythm of such a place? The city would awaken not with noise, but with the first touch of sunlight striking a central spire. The daily announcements, the market prices, the philosophical teachings, even the poetry, would all flow across this network of light and stone. It was a prehistoric internet, a real-time information system powered entirely by the sun, where the architecture itself was the hardware and the shifting patterns of shadow and light were the data. This was a society that had woven its very identity into the fabric of its city, a civilization that literally lived inside its language. This intricate network of light was governed by a celestial clock. In Lumina, the sun was not merely a power source, it was the ultimate editor, its position in the sky dictating the very meaning of every message sent. The civilization operated on a system of solar dialects, where the same pattern of light and shadow could convey entirely different information based solely on the time of day or the season of its projection. A message was not just what you saw, but when you saw it. The summer solstice, with the sun at its absolute zenith, was a time of supreme authority, a symbol projected in the uncompromising, direct light of high noon on that day carried the weight of ultimate law, an edict from the ruling class that was considered irrefutable truth, as solid and undeniable as the ground beneath their feet. That exact same pattern cast during the weak, low-angled light of the winter solstice underwent a complete transformation. Its meaning would shift to something somber and reflective. It might announce a day of remembrance for the departed, or signal the start of a secret council meeting held in the long shadows of the year. The light's quality infused the message with its emotional and legal context. This system demanded an astonishingly high level of cultural literacy from every citizen. To be a functioning member of Luminarian society, you needed to be more than just fluent in the visual symbols. You had to be a master reader of the sky itself. Your daily life depended on knowing the solar calendar with intimate precision, understanding the subtle differences in solar angle from one month to the next, and recognizing how the fading gold of an autumn equinox altered the proclamation from a city spire. This was a form of knowledge woven directly into the fabric of existence. A farmer glancing up at a message on a plaza wall would instantly understand its nuanced meaning based on the warmth of the light on his skin and the length of the shadows it cast. A society's entire frame of reference, its shared sense of history, law, and poetry, was synchronized with the cosmic dance of their star. It redefines what we think of as an educated population. We measure literacy by the ability to read words on a page. They measured it by the ability to read the universe. But how do you build a library without a single book? The answer lies deep underground, in the silent, cool chambers the Luminarians called the Shadow Archives. While their cities spoke with the light of the present, these archives were designed to whisper from the past, preserving their entire culture in a form of data storage we are only beginning to comprehend. Imagine walking down a narrow staircase, leaving the bright, communicative world above for a place of absolute quiet. You enter a vast, circular room, its walls perfectly smooth and white. In the center of this room sits not a shelf of scrolls, but an impossibly complex sculpture. It is a three-dimensional latticework of finely carved crystal filaments and twisted metal rods, looking like a frozen, geometric nebula. This object is not the record itself, it is the key. At a precise time of day calculated for a specific season, a narrow shaft of sunlight would pierce the darkness from an opening in the ceiling. As this beam struck the central lattice, the entire chamber would transform. The intricate sculpture would cast a shadow of breathtaking complexity onto the wall, a projection of fine lines and shapes that formed a complete, readable text. This was their library. A single lattice could hold the equivalent of an entire epic poem, a complete set of laws or generations of tax records, all encoded in the negative space of its shadow. The system was dynamic, alive with possibility. An archivist, by using a mirrored tool to minutely adjust the angle of the incoming light beam, could make the shadow on the wall shift and change. This was the equivalent of scrolling through a digital document or turning the pages of a book. A slight tilt to the left and the shadow would reconfigure, revealing the next chapter of the law. A gentle nudge upward and the poetry would transition to its final verse. They were not reading a single, fixed image. They were navigating a multi-dimensional data field where light acted as the cursor and shadow was the text. This challenges our most fundamental ideas about preserving knowledge. We etch words into stone or print them on paper, creating a permanent, physical object. The Luminarians stored information as a relationship between an object and a light source. The knowledge itself had no physical form until the moment it was needed, emerging from the interplay of crystal and sunlight only when called upon. It was a library that only truly existed when it was being read, a civilization that chose to write its history not in ink but in ephemeral darkness. This silent library of shadow points toward their grandest achievement. The most compelling evidence of their mastery is an event modern scholars call the Great Alignment. Every 52 years, on the dawn of the spring equinox, the capital city became a single, massive communication device. The first rays of the sun would pass through a series of 7 perfectly aligned archways, each one acting as a lens and a filter. This orchestrated beam of light, refined and focused through its long journey, would finally strike the polished facade of the Hall of Ancestors. There, it would project a single, breathtakingly complex symbol, a 7-part emblem that told a complete story in an instant. This was no random act of celestial geometry. The precision required to align 7 separate architectural structures with the sun's position on a single day, once every 52 years, represents an investment of generations. The city itself was a clock, and its chime was a burst of silent light. Archaeological evidence strongly suggests this was the civilization's most important message, a reaffirmation of their societal covenant. It might have announced the peaceful succession of a new ruler, a renewal of their core laws, or a celestial contract between the people and their gods. The message's meaning was tied irrevocably to its timing. Its power came from its rarity, from the fact that an entire generation might live and die witnessing this event only once. Can you imagine the anticipation, the cultural weight of that morning? The entire population would gather in the central plaza, their faces turned not toward a speaker, but toward the eastern archways, waiting for the sun to birth its annual decree. The Great Alignment shows us that the Luminarians did not just communicate with light, they wove time itself into their discourse. They built moments of profound cultural significance into the very rotation of their planet, creating a calendar where the most important announcements were written not on parchment, but across the sky. Yet even as the sun set, the city did not fall completely silent. The Luminarians refused to let the darkness impose a curfew on their discourse. They engineered a second, more intimate layer to their language using the controlled glow of artificial light, proving their entire worldview was built upon illumination, not just the sun itself. For nocturnal communication and the private conversations held indoors, they developed sophisticated tools. Advanced oil lamps were not simple vessels of flame. They were precision instruments, fitted with adjustable wicks to modulate the intensity of the light, and polished bronze reflectors to focus the beam into a tight, readable stream. This allowed a council to deliberate deep into the night, their arguments and decrees cast as sharp shadows upon a chamber wall, the flicker of the flame adding a living, urgent quality to the syntax. More mysterious are the artifacts known as moonstones. These were not carved but harvested from deep, secluded caves. They were naturally phosphorescent minerals that, after being charged by sunlight, would emit a soft, ethereal glow for hours. This gentle, enduring light was the equivalent of a whispered conversation. A moonstone placed between 2 people in a secluded courtyard provided the perfect private canvas for a personal exchange, a romantic poem, or a clandestine meeting. Its light was too faint to carry far, ensuring the message remained for its intended recipients only. This mastery of artificial sources created a 24-hour communicative cycle, a society that truly never slept. But it also introduced a new social divide. While the sun's language was democratic, falling on every citizen in the public squares, the night belonged to those who could afford it. A consistent, high-quality oil lamp with a clean, bright flame, or the possession of a rare, long-lasting moonstone, these were likely markers of wealth and status. The elite could continue their business and their private intrigues long after the communal light of day had faded, adding a layer of shadowy stratification to a civilization already defined by its play of light and dark. The elegance of Luminarian communication concealed a rigid social structure. In a society that spoke with light, the right to project it was a privilege granted only to a few. A strict hierarchy was etched into their very methods of discourse, dividing the population into those who broadcast and those who only received. At the pinnacle of this structure were the illuminators. This ruling class held a sacred monopoly on the most powerful tool, the central solar temples and the great spire scribes. They alone possessed the advanced astronomical knowledge to calculate the precise angles for the solar dialects and controlled the lexicon stones needed to project laws, historical records, and commands across the entire city. Their messages, cast with the authority of the sun itself, were not open for debate. To control light was to control reality. Below them, the artisan and merchant classes had a more localized voice. They were permitted to use smaller, portable devices for their daily affairs. Imagine a trader in a bustling market, not calling out prices, but using a small, handheld disc of polished bronze to cast a specific pattern of light onto a designated stone, signaling the cost of his goods. A master craftsman might project a complex symbol onto the street, a silent advertisement for his skills visible only to those who understood the code. Their light was functional, commercial, and geographically limited, a stark contrast to the city-wide decrees of the illuminators. The vast majority of the population, the laborers and farmers, existed in a state of perpetual listening. Their role was to observe, to interpret, and to obey. They were fluent readers of the public displays on the echo walls, their daily lives dictated by the messages that cascaded down from the spires. They could understand the poetry and the laws, but they could not author them. This control over the means of communication was the ultimate foundation of illuminator power. It was a system where social class was not just defined by wealth or birth, but by one's ability to participate in the communal conversation. A person's place in the world was quite literally illuminated for all to see, a silent, elegant, and profoundly effective way of maintaining order. The very technology that connected their society also meticulously policed its boundaries. This rigid control over illumination may have been the very thing that sealed their fate. The most profound mystery surrounding Lumina is not how they lived, but why they vanished so completely. Across their entire territory, archaeologists have found cities that appear to have been peacefully abandoned. There are no layers of ash from invasion, no mass graves from plague, no signs of resource collapse or social uprising. The structures stand intact, the lexicon stones neatly stored, as if the entire population simply walked away one day and never returned. The leading explanation for this enigma is the celestial silence hypothesis. It suggests that Lumina did not fall to a human enemy, but to a change in the sky itself. Imagine a catastrophic atmospheric event, something like a massive volcanic eruption on the other side of the world, or a period of intense global cooling. The result would have been a perpetual, thick cloud cover, a volcanic winter that could have lasted for a generation. For a civilization like ours, this would be a crisis of agriculture and temperature. For the Luminarians, it was a crisis of existence. The sun, their source of power, knowledge, and law, was extinguished. Their world did not just grow dark, it grew silent. The spire scribes stood mute, their lenses staring up at a blank, gray sky. The echo walls remained empty canvases. the shadow archives, those intricate libraries of crystal, became utterly useless, their central lattices casting no readable shadow in the dim, diffuse light. Their entire method of governance, their daily commerce, their historical records, and their sacred poetry, all of it was stored in a medium that had suddenly disappeared. How do you rule when your decrees cannot be projected? How do you teach when your libraries cannot be read? How do you maintain a shared identity when the very thing that connects you has been taken away? The social hierarchy, so dependent on the controlled projection of light, would have collapsed into chaos. The illuminators, whose power was based on their mastery of the sun, would have been revealed as powerless. Their authority literally faded to gray. The intricate language that held their society together became a forgotten relic in a matter of years, perhaps even months. Their civilization did not burn, it simply faded, starved of the one resource it could not live without: light. They were a people who built their reality on the most ephemeral of foundations, and when the sky turned against them, that reality dissolved into silence, leaving behind only stone and a haunting question: what becomes of us when the medium of our connection vanishes? This silent collapse was not the end of the story. A new discovery, made not with a trowel but with a satellite, has revealed that the Luminarian world was far larger and more daring than we ever imagined. Deep within a nearly impassable mountain range, hundreds of miles from the nearest known city, lies a structure archaeologists have named Sky Sanctum. This remote outpost defies all previous understanding of their architecture. Its design is not optimized for the warm, broad light of the sun, but for the cold, pinpoint precision of starlight. Its central feature is a massive, bowl-like reflector carved directly into the mountain peak, aimed not at the horizon but at the void of space. What was the purpose of this lonely citadel? A prevailing theory suggests it was a research outpost, a kind of celestial laboratory where the most advanced illuminators pushed their language to its absolute limits. Starlight is a far more challenging medium than sunlight. It is faint, and its arrival angle shifts with excruciating slowness over the centuries. To encode a message in a beam of starlight would require a level of precision and patience that seems almost superhuman. Were they attempting to communicate over even greater distances, or perhaps record messages meant to be read across millennia, using the fixed positions of the stars as a timeless clock? Another compelling idea is that Sky Sanctum was a spiritual retreat. If the sun was the voice of their daily law and society, then the stars might have represented a higher, purer form of truth. The illuminators who journeyed here may have been seeking a direct, unmediated dialogue with the cosmos, free from the social noise of the city. They might have believed that the faint light of distant suns carried a more fundamental syntax, the original language of the universe itself. In this reading, the outpost was not a laboratory but a monastery, a place for silent contemplation and the pursuit of ultimate meaning written in the sky. There is a third, darker possibility, that Sky Sanctum is evidence of a desperate colonial expansion. As their core territories faced the growing threat of the celestial silence, did a faction of illuminators attempt to establish a new society in an environment they believed was safe from the cloud cover that was choking their cities? The high-altitude location above the weather systems would have been a logical, if desperate, refuge. The fact that the site shows signs of being occupied for only a very short time suggests this grand experiment failed. They may have found their clear skies, but the thin air and brutal cold of the mountain peak proved an even more unforgiving enemy. This single, isolated structure forces us to redraw the map of their entire civilization. It reveals a people not content to simply live within their system of light, but driven to expand it, to test its boundaries against the coldest and most distant sources of illumination. Their ambition reached literally for the stars, and the silent stones of Sky Sanctum hold the secret to how far they were willing to go. The most controversial discovery in Lumina was not a lexicon stone or a spire, but a silent, metallic ear aimed at the void. Deep within the ruins of a secondary city, archaeologists unearthed a structure that defied every architectural principle of the civilization. They called it the Anomalous Receiver. It was a colossal parabolic dish 50 feet across, forged from a dark, non-corrosive alloy found nowhere else in their territory. Its smooth, concave surface was not pointed toward the rising sun or the city center, but locked in a permanent, rigid position, aimed straight up at the empty zenith of the sky. This was not a tool for projecting messages across a city. It was built for one purpose only: to listen. The design is an absolute anomaly. Every other Luminarian structure was part of an integrated network, a conversation between buildings. The receiver stands alone. Its alloy is a metallurgical mystery, a blend of elements that suggests a level of material science far beyond what was used for their spires and echo walls. The most baffling question is what exactly it was meant to receive. Sunlight from directly overhead is brief and changes throughout the day, making it useless for their complex syntax. Starlight is too faint. The dish's perfect, fixed orientation suggests it was waiting for a signal from a single, specific point in the cosmos, a source that did not move with the turning of the Earth. This is where the mystery fractures the archaeological community. Mainstream scholars argue it must have had a practical, terrestrial function we simply do not yet understand, perhaps a highly advanced weather monitoring station or a type of astronomical clock. But they cannot explain the unique material or its solitary, static aim. Fringe theorists propose a more staggering possibility. They suggest the receiver is evidence that the Luminarians were engaged in a project of interstellar communication. After mastering their own world with light, did they turn their attention outward, attempting to listen for a signal from another star system? Were they not just broadcasting to each other, but patiently awaiting a reply from the darkness? The terrifying implication is that their entire civilization, with its silent, luminous language, might have been a response to a message they once received, a long-forgotten lesson from the stars. The receiver forces a haunting question upon us. Were the Luminarians the sole architects of their brilliant society, or were they merely the students of a teacher we can no longer see? The silent stones of Lumina speak directly to our own world of flickering screens and instant messages. Their mastery of light as a carrier of information finds its ultimate echo in the fiber optic cables that now crisscross our planet. Just as the Luminarians encoded complex ideas into beams of sunlight, we translate our entire digital existence into pulses of laser light, sending them racing through glass threads at unimaginable speeds. The medium is the same, light itself, a bridge of photons connecting two civilizations separated by millennia. Yet the parallel runs even deeper into the very structure of society. The illuminators, who held a sacred monopoly over the spire scribes and the solar temples, find their modern counterpart in the corporations and governments that control the digital infrastructure of our age. The power to broadcast, to shape the narrative, to control the flow of information, remains concentrated in the hands of a privileged few. The ancient Luminarian who could only receive messages in the public square, unable to project their own voice, is mirrored in the modern user who consumes content on a platform they do not own, subject to algorithms they cannot influence. This creates a digital divide as stark as the Luminarian social hierarchy, where access to a reliable, high-speed connection and the literacy to use it effectively dictate one's ability to fully participate in society. The fundamental challenges are timeless. How do we ensure information travels quickly and clearly? How do we manage who gets to speak and who must listen? The Luminarians built echo walls to focus faint signals, a solution not so different from our network towers boosting a cellular signal. They developed Solar Dialects to add nuance, much as we use emojis and formatting to convey tone in a text message. Their civilization serves as a profound, silent lesson. It shows us that the technology of connection is never neutral. It always carries the imprint of the power structures that create it. As we navigate the promises and perils of our own hyper-connected age, the story of this lost people offers a unique lens for reflection. Are we, like the Illuminators, building a system that empowers a select few while the majority merely listen? And if our own source of power, our digital sun, were to be suddenly extinguished, what would remain of our shared reality? A world without the spoken word would fundamentally rewire the human mind. In Lumina, the absence of chatter, debate, and casual gossip forced a different cognitive framework into existence. Every communication was an act of deliberate creation. You could not simply shout across a street to a friend. To express even a simple idea, you had to choose the correct lexicon stone, consider the angle of your light source, and calculate the emotional tone its color would impart. This was not a culture of impulsive reaction. It was a civilization built on the bedrock of forethought and meticulous precision. The very pace of life would have been different, slower, more measured. Conversations unfolded with the patient rhythm of the sun moving across the sky, not the frantic back and forth of a spoken argument. This constant, necessary practice in careful planning and precise execution would have cultivated a populace of natural introverts and profound observers. Their inner worlds must have been incredibly rich, their thoughts fully formed before they were ever cast into light. Imagine the social discipline this required. A careless word spoken in anger can be retracted, or at least its tone softened with an apology, but a symbol of condemnation, projected with the stark white light of high noon onto a public echo wall, was a permanent, undeniable act. There was no taking it back. This immense responsibility for one's projected words would have fostered a culture of extreme consideration, where social harmony depended on every individual thinking deeply before they communicated. The flip side of this quiet world was an unparalleled sensitivity to visual nuance. A Luminarian citizen would have been a master of reading micro-expressions in the play of light and shadow, of interpreting the slightest tremble in a hand-held lamp as a sign of uncertainty, or the unwavering steadiness of a beam as a mark of absolute conviction. Their entire social and emotional intelligence was channeled through the eyes, not the ears. This raises a profound question about our own noisy existence. Does our constant access to spoken language, our ability to fill the air with sound, make us more impulsive, less considered in our interactions? The silent, luminous society of Lumina suggests that the medium of our communication is not just a tool, it is the architect of our collective consciousness. It quietly asks us who we might become if our words carried the weight of light and the permanence of shadow. Their philosophy of light found its purest expression not in law but in art. For the Luminarians, there was no distinction between a public announcement and an aesthetic experience, because every projected message was crafted with an artist's eye for balance, color, and form. The daily information flow was a continuous, city-wide performance, a symphony of illumination where the shifting angles of the sun composed the music and the architecture provided the instruments. But this was merely the background canvas. The true masterpieces were reserved for special occasions, festivals dedicated entirely to the ephemeral magic of their medium. These were the competitions of the light weavers, artists who were both poets and engineers. Using elaborate arrays of polished bronze mirrors, flawless crystal prisms, and specially designed Lexicon stones, they would transform entire plazas into temporary theaters of narrative light. One weaver might tell the story of a mythical hero's journey, not with words, but with a cascading sequence of symbolic shapes that flowed and morphed across the curved surface of an echo wall. The hero's triumph signaled by a sudden burst of gold light refracted through a honey-colored crystal. Another might create an abstract sculpture made entirely of intersecting beams, a three-dimensional lattice of pure color that hung in the air of a darkened hall, a structure you could almost but not quite walk through. The central, heartbreaking beauty of this art was its impermanence. A narrative that took months to plan would exist for only a few minutes, precisely as long as the sun remained at the perfect angle in the sky. As the celestial clock moved, the story would begin to distort, its colors fading, its sharp lines blurring until it dissolved back into ordinary daylight. There were no recordings, no sketches to preserve it. The art lived only in the memory of those who witnessed it. This cultivated a profound cultural philosophy centered on the value of the present moment. To be a citizen of Lumina was to understand that beauty, like light itself, is a fleeting gift. It taught them to be deeply attentive, to fully immerse themselves in the experience before them, knowing it would never come again in exactly the same way. This stands in stark contrast to our modern impulse to capture and archive every significant moment. We watch concerts through the screens of our phones, desperate to hold onto the experience, often at the cost of truly living it. The Luminarians would have found this baffling. They built a civilization on the principle that the most valuable things are often the ones you cannot keep. A society that found its deepest meaning not in the permanent record, but in the glorious, transient now. The silent stones of Lumina do not give up their secrets easily. Unlocking their language requires a toolkit that spans centuries, from the humble trowel to satellites orbiting high above the Earth. Modern archaeologists begin with three-dimensional laser scanning, a technology that maps every curve and angle of a spire scribe or echo wall with millimeter precision. This data reveals the breathtaking engineering behind the Solar Dialects, showing exactly how a wall was curved to focus a beam of light onto a single reading stone hundreds of feet away. But a map of the stone is not enough. To hear the city speak, researchers use sophisticated software to simulate the ancient sun. By inputting the precise geographic coordinates and the architectural data, they can recreate the light conditions for any day of the year, from a summer solstice in 1500 BCE to a rainy afternoon in 800 BCE. They can watch as a symbol projected at noon sharpens into legal clarity, or see how the same pattern softens into poetry at dusk. This digital resurrection turns a silent ruin back into a living, communicative space, if only on a computer screen. In the laboratory, the mysterious moonstones undergo spectrographic analysis. By studying the specific wavelengths of light these stones emit, scientists can determine their exact mineral composition, identifying the unique phosphorescent elements that allowed them to glow. This tells us not just what they were, but how they were used. A stone with a long, steady emission curve would have been perfect for a lengthy private conversation, while one with a shorter, brighter glow might have been reserved for brief, urgent messages. This interdisciplinary approach, this marriage of the physical dig and the virtual model, is our only bridge to their silent world. It shows that to understand a civilization that communicated with light, we must learn to see with their eyes, using every beam of data we can gather to illuminate the shadows they left behind. The allure of a silent civilization has inevitably woven a tapestry of wild speculation around the ruins of Lumina. Some claim these people were the last survivors of a sunken continent like Atlantis, possessing powers we would call magic. Others suggest they harnessed a form of perpetual light, a technology lost to time. Yet when we hold these captivating stories up to the cold, hard light of archaeological evidence, they evaporate like morning mist. The truth is both more human and more remarkable. Take the legendary tales of chambers that glowed with an eternal, internal light. Folklore describes rooms that remained illuminated even on the darkest nights. The reality, uncovered in the excavation of a high priest's residence, was a masterpiece of simple engineering. Archaeologists found a small, circular chamber with walls lined in highly polished bronze, its ceiling open to the sky. A single, large moonstone was placed in the center. During the day, sunlight would charge the stone. At night, its soft, phosphorescent glow would be captured and amplified by the reflective walls, creating a diffuse, enduring luminescence that could last for hours. It was not magic. It was a brilliantly designed battery for stored sunlight. There is also no evidence in the entire archaeological record for anything resembling advanced technology or otherworldly power. Every single artifact, from the smallest Lexicon stone to the grandest spire scribe, operates on principles of optics, astronomy, and material science that we can fully comprehend and replicate. Their genius was not in defying physics, but in mastering its most elegant applications to a degree no other culture achieved. They did not have magic. They had a profound and patient understanding of the world around them. This rigorous separation of fact from fiction is not meant to diminish their legacy, but to elevate it. The real story of Lumina is not about Atlantean refugees or supernatural forces. It is a story about human creativity, solving the problem of connection with the tools at hand. It is a testament to what a society can achieve when it focuses its collective intellect on a single, brilliant idea. To attribute their accomplishments to magic is to rob them of the credit they truly deserve. They were not wizards, they were engineers, artists, and philosophers of light, and their purely human achievement is more wondrous than any myth we could invent. The echoes of Lumina's silent language force us to look at the rest of the ancient world with new eyes. Scattered across history, other cultures clearly understood the power of light as a messenger. The ancient Greeks used polished shields as heliographs to flash warnings across mountain valleys. Indigenous tribes in North America encoded complex meanings into the rising columns of smoke signals. These were brilliant, effective systems for transmitting information across vast distances. Yet when we place them next to the Luminarian world, the difference is not just one of scale, but of fundamental purpose. For the Greeks or the indigenous tribes, light and smoke were tools for specific, often urgent, messages. They were a supplement to a world rich with spoken language, song, and ceremony. For the Luminarians, photonic syntax was the language itself. It was their law, their poetry, their market prices, and their identity, all woven into a single, seamless system of light. This stark difference ignites a fierce debate among historians. Was Lumina a solitary beacon of genius, or did its light spill over its borders? The theory of cultural diffusion suggests that Luminarian traders, venturing out for resources, might have carried the core concept with them. Perhaps a traveling merchant demonstrated a basic lexicon stone to a curious Greek sailor, inspiring the simpler idea of a flashing shield. Maybe the very principle of encoding information in light was a seed that was planted in distant lands, only to grow into the much simpler plants of heliographs and smoke signals. It is a compelling narrative, one of a master civilization teaching the world, but there is a more profound and perhaps more likely explanation. Convergent evolution proposes that different societies, when faced with a similar problem, can arrive at strikingly similar solutions entirely on their own. The problem is universal. How do you communicate faster than a human can run or shout? The most readily available solution for any culture with a view of the sky is to use the sky itself. The sun is the most powerful and visible resource any ancient people possessed. Is it so surprising that multiple cultures, separated by continents and oceans, would independently discover that they could manipulate its light to send a message? This does not diminish Lumina's achievement. In fact, it makes it even more remarkable. They were not merely the first to have the idea. They were the ones who took that simple, universal spark and built an entire civilization around it. They pursued the concept to its absolute, logical extreme while others were content with a useful tool. The global context does not reveal a network of Luminarian colonies, but rather highlights the unique obsession that made them who they were. They were the civilization that chose to never stop speaking when the sun went down, that wove their words into the fabric of their cities, and in doing so, created something the world had never seen before and has never seen since. The silent philosophy of Lumina did not vanish with its people. It merely went dormant, waiting for a new generation to learn its language. A quiet revolution is reshaping our modern cities, one that draws a direct line back to those ancient principles of light and shadow. Contemporary architecture is now embracing what are called kinetic facades. These are not static walls of glass and steel, but dynamic surfaces that breathe and change with the sun. A building might be clad in thousands of individually rotating aluminum fins. As the sun arcs across the sky, these fins turn minutely, casting an ever-shifting tapestry of shadows across the interior. The building's relationship with its environment is no longer passive, it becomes a conversation. This is Luminarian thinking reborn, the idea that a structure should not just exist in the light, but actively engage with it, using its movement to tell a story of the passing day. Inside these structures, the legacy grows even more vivid. Modern light artists have become the new age light weavers, trading polished bronze for digital projectors and Lexicon stones for complex algorithms. They create vast, immersive installations that exist only for a single night. Imagine walking into a warehouse where lasers carve three-dimensional shapes in the fog, or where a narrative is painted across a wall with high-definition light, a story that morphs and then disappears forever when the projector is switched off. This art celebrates the same beautiful impermanence that defined the ancient festivals, forcing the viewer to be fully present in a moment of fleeting beauty. This global revival is not a simple act of historical cosplay. It is a profound recognition that the Luminarians were onto something essential. In our world of overwhelming visual noise and digital permanence, their core idea offers a powerful antidote. They believed our environment should not be a blank slate, but an active participant in our lives, a canvas for communication and emotion that changes with time. We are instinctively drawn back to this philosophy, using our own advanced tools to achieve what they did with crystal and sunlight. We are learning once again that the most powerful messages are not always the ones that last forever, but the ones that make us feel truly alive while they are here. This power to resurrect a dead language carries a profound ethical weight. We now possess the digital models and the optical engineering to truly bring a Spire scribe back to life. We could, on the next summer solstice, aim a precisely calibrated beam of sunlight through a reconstructed Lexicon stone and cast a genuine Luminarian sentence onto an awaiting echo wall. For the first time in over 3,000 years, their city would speak. The temptation is immense, a siren call to every historian and engineer. It would be the ultimate experiment, the final proof that we have correctly decoded their entire world. But this act is not a simple test. It forces us to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. Do we have the right? Is this a magnificent act of rediscovery, or is it a form of archaeological desecration? The ruins of Lumina have been silent for centuries. They are a sacred, silent space, a tomb for a unique human consciousness. By projecting our own reconstructed messages, we are not just observing their culture. We are intruding upon it. We are speaking for a people who can no longer speak for themselves. This dilemma becomes even more complex when we consider the nature of their communication. What if we accidentally project a message of law that we misunderstand? What if a symbol we believe is a greeting is actually a curse or a declaration of war? We would be polluting their legacy with our own modern misinterpretations, placing words into the mouths of the dead without their consent. This is not like translating a clay tablet in a museum vault. This is actively using their most sacred technology, the very medium of their soul, for our own intellectual curiosity. The responsibility is staggering. As our own technology gives us ever greater power to interface with the past, from virtual reality reconstructions to genetic analysis, the story of Lumina serves as a crucial test case. It asks us where the line is between learning from history and exploiting it. Do we honor a lost civilization by letting its silence remain, or by making it speak once more? The answer is not written on any wall, and it is a question we will carry with us long after the simulated light has faded. The silent stones of Lumina still guard their deepest secrets. While we have pieced together the mechanics of their photonic syntax, we have yet to comprehend its soul. What was the full vocabulary of their light-based language? We can recognize a few hundred symbols, but this is likely just a fraction of their complete lexicon. It is the difference between knowing the alphabet of a foreign tongue and understanding its poetry, its jokes, and its curses. The most fundamental mystery remains whether they had a written form for designing these messages. Did their architects and poets use a chalk slate or a wax tablet to sketch out the complex interactions of light and shadow before committing them to stone? Or was the entire process conceived and memorized in the mind, a purely mental architecture of incredible complexity? Finding even a fragment of such a design script would be a discovery on par with the first lexicon stone. The next phase of research will not rely on trowels alone. It will be driven by quantum light sensors, devices so sensitive they can detect the faintest residual photon patterns etched into stone surfaces over millennia. The theory is that even a surface that looks blank to our eyes might retain a subtle energy signature, a ghost of the intense, focused light that struck it repeatedly for generations. It is like trying to listen for an echo long after the sound has faded into silence. Alongside these advanced sensors, artificial intelligence will be deployed to search for the grammatical rules we have missed. Our human brains are limited in their ability to find patterns within the vast database of recorded shadow casts. And our eye, however, can analyze thousands of projections simultaneously, looking for subtle correlations, recurring sequences, and syntactic structures that hint at a deeper logic. It might discover that a certain symbol only ever appears when preceded by two specific others, revealing a rule of grammar as fundamental as a verb following a subject. Each of these technological advances promises to pull back another layer of the shadow. We are no longer just excavating a city, we are learning to read its mind. The ultimate goal is no longer mere observation, but dialogue. We want to move beyond interpreting their messages to understanding their responses, to hold a complete conversation with this long-lost civilization across the gulf of time. Every new tool brings us closer to the moment when we can finally listen to the full story they were trying to tell, not in fragments, but as a continuous narrative written in the most beautiful and fleeting of inks. Lumina's entire existence was a philosophical argument carved from light. They constructed a society where the most fleeting phenomenon imaginable, the simple shadow, became the foundation for everything they were. This directly challenges our modern, deeply materialistic view of the world. We are taught that reality is built from things we can touch and weigh, from stone and steel and solid matter. The Luminarians declared through their every action that true substance could be found in the empty spaces, in the dynamic interplay between energy and its absence. A projected symbol had no physical form, no mass, no permanence, yet it could carry the full force of law, the delicate beauty of poetry, and the weight of an entire identity. It was real because it created consequence. It shaped behavior, inspired love, and enforced order, all without ever becoming a tangible object. This perspective reframes our own world in a startling new light. We live surrounded by forces that are just as intangible as a Luminarian shadow. Our most powerful realities are not physical. An idea can topple governments. A shared emotion can unite millions of strangers. The digital information flowing through our networks has no solid form, yet it dictates our finances, our relationships, and our understanding of current events. We are already living in a world built upon Luminarian principles. We just refuse to see it. Their civilization stands as a profound metaphor, urging us to recognize that the most real and lasting things in our lives are often the very things we cannot grasp in our hands. The love for a child, the sting of a betrayal, the hope for a better future, these are the shadows that shape our days. Lumina did not just speak with light. It proved that reality is not only what is solid, but what is felt, what is communicated, and what is believed. Lumina's silent language occupies a strange and revealing space between the two great pillars of human communication, the spoken word and the written text. Oral traditions, like those of ancient bards or West African griots, were powerful but fleeting. A story lived in the breath of the storyteller, changing slightly with each performance, its survival dependent on the fragile chain of human memory. Written traditions born from clay tablets and papyrus scrolls offered permanence. A law carved in stone could outlive empires, but it was fixed, unchanging, and often accessible only to a literate elite. The Luminarian system brilliantly fused aspects of both. Their light-cast messages possessed the ephemeral nature of speech. A proclamation on an echo wall lasted only as long as the sun held its position. Then it was gone, just like a spoken word fading on the air. Yet it also had the precision and broadcast potential of writing. The symbol for a specific grain measurement or a legal concept was standardized and could be projected identically across an entire city, ensuring a consistency that an oral poet might never achieve. This created a unique social dynamic. Their system was arguably more democratic than an oral tradition controlled by a privileged class of bards, as the same message was visible to everyone in the public square simultaneously. Yet it was also more exclusive than a society with mass literacy, because the power to project complex messages remained firmly in the hands of the illuminators. The average citizen could read the light, but they could not write with it. This three-way comparison lays bare the inherent trade-offs in every communication technology we invent. Orality offers flexibility and community but risks distortion and loss. Writing provides stability and reach but can create hierarchies and a loss of living context. Lumina's photonic syntax attempted a middle path, a system with the living, present-moment quality of a performance and the structured, repeatable clarity of a text. They sought a balance we are still struggling to find in our own noisy era, caught between the transient fire of a social media tweet and the cold, permanent storage of a terabyte of data. Their silent stones ask us whether we have truly mastered the art of conveying meaning, or if we are still just learning to see the light. For years, Dr. Ilara Vance had known the theory of the Great Alignment, the numbers and angles committed to memory, yet nothing prepared her for the living reality of that moment. She stood in the central plaza of the capital city as the first sliver of the equinox sun crested the distant mountains. A hush fell over the team of engineers and archaeologists, the only sound the whisper of the morning wind. One by one, the 7 archways ignited, capturing the nascent light and channeling it into a single, focused beam that raced across the stone landscape. Her breath caught as it finally struck the Hall of Ancestors. At first, it was just a blur of gold. Then, with agonizing slowness, the symbol began to resolve. Lines sharpened, curves defined themselves, and a complex 7-part emblem bloomed on the ancient wall, perfect and silent. In that instant, decades of scholarly detachment shattered. A wave of emotion, raw and unexpected, washed over her. This was not a simulation on a screen. This was the city speaking its one sacred word after 3,000 years of silence, and she was there to hear it. The feeling was not one of academic triumph, but of profound connection. It was as if a bridge made of pure light had formed between her time and theirs, and for one breathtaking minute, she could almost feel the presence of the people who had built this moment, who had waited a lifetime to see this symbol appear. The frustration of broken pottery shards, the tedium of cataloging, the years of doubt from colleagues, all of it melted away in that golden light. We chase these lost civilizations to collect their facts, to map their cities and to code their languages. But Ilara's story reminds us that the deeper quest is for the shared human experience that transcends the millennia. It is the passion to hear a voice that has been silenced, and the awe that comes from realizing that voice can still reach us if we are patient enough to learn how to listen. The silent stones of Lumina do more than rewrite our past. They recalibrate our search for other minds in the cosmos. Our quest to find extraterrestrial intelligence, known as SETI, has for decades been a project of listening. We point massive radio telescopes at the stars, straining to hear a whisper in the static, a signal that mirrors our own 20th century technology. This approach makes a profound and potentially limiting assumption that an advanced civilization will choose to communicate in a way we can readily hear. The Luminarians shatter this premise. They prove that a species can achieve breathtaking cultural and technological sophistication using a channel we largely ignore: structured light. If a human society could build an entire identity around a silent, visual language, then an alien species, evolving under a different sun on a different world, might develop a form of intelligence that is fundamentally, inherently photonic. Our current search parameters are a reflection of our own technological adolescence. We listen for radio waves because we once used them to broadcast our presence to the world. It is a search shaped by our own cultural mirror. Lumina forces us to look into a wider, more imaginative sky. We should not only be listening for a crackle in the void, but also looking for a flash of meaning. This could take the form of incredibly subtle, artificial patterns in the dimming of a distant star, a signature of massive light-based structures orbiting it. Or it could be a deliberate, pulsed laser signal, a directed beam of energy carrying information exactly like a spire scribe projecting a message across a city. Such a signal would be far more efficient than a radio broadcast, and for a civilization that thinks in terms of light, it would be the most natural way to speak across the interstellar ocean. The most profound lesson Lumina offers SETI is that intelligence might not announce itself with a sound. It might manifest as a carefully arranged silence, a purposeful pattern waiting in the light of a star, a beacon that does not shout, but simply shines with undeniable intent. We have been waiting for a cosmic hello when we should also be watching for a silent, luminous wink. Lumina stands as a testament to a truth we often forget, that human ingenuity can build entire worlds from the most insubstantial of materials. This was a civilization that did not just use light, but thought in its very syntax, weaving their laws, their poetry, and their marketplaces from sunbeams and shadow. Their silent cities force us to expand our definition of language itself, to recognize that communication is not merely about words, but about the structures, both visible and invisible, that carry meaning between us. We are surrounded by our own versions of photonic syntax every day, in the fiber optic pulses that carry our digital lives and the curated light of our screens. The Luminarians, in their brilliant obsession, hold up a mirror to our own age, reminding us that the power to broadcast carries with it a profound social responsibility. Their legacy is not just in the stones they left behind, but in the quiet challenge they pose to our noisy modern world. They found profound beauty in the ephemeral, building a culture that celebrated the present moment with an intensity we often lack in our rush to record and archive everything. As we move forward into an ever more connected future, their story whispers a crucial lesson that the true measure of a society may not be in the permanence of its records, but in the depth of its attention to the fleeting, beautiful now. Their lights were extinguished by a silent sky, but the long shadows they cast continue to shape our understanding of what it means to be human, to connect, and to build a world not just of stone but of meaning. What do you think their silent language would tell us about our own? Share your reflections in the comments and subscribe to join our ongoing journey into the deepest mysteries of our past.